I'm Sonny Barker, and we are in Jack's in Biloxi, Mississippi. Jack's was originally called Jim and Kathy's Cards and Collectibles. And I convinced Jim Whitaker, who was the original owner, to change it to the acronym, because when you drove down the street, all you saw was the bigger letters, the J, A, K, and apostrophe S. You couldn't really read the Jim and Kathy's part. In 1992, I was teaching English in Nichols Middle School, and I was offered to go to a conference, a gang conference in New Orleans, which I met the chief of police of Biloxi, Tommy Moffett at the time, and he offered me a job. Well, I kind of thought about it for a little while, talked to my family, and then eventually I decided to go take the test and do everything I needed to do to become a police officer. Then he hired me, like he said he would. But I was like third out of 42, so I had a pretty good chance of getting hired. About 1996, Jim Whitaker, the original owner, decided he was going to change directions and get a job at the casinos. The casino building was hopping. He got a contract job over there, made big money. So he ended up selling the store to me in '96. So I've owned it for a little over 20 years now. All right, we have a lot of dynamic things here, mostly based on some kind of gaming, role-playing games, card games, board games. This section here is the role-playing game section. It's got Pathfinder in it. It's got the new Dungeons & Dragons in it. It's got other role-playing games that are supported by us. To the right is the older D&D, the first, second, third, and fourth edition Dungeons & Dragons, some GURPS. To the left, we have a little wall of anime. They're called mangas, which is the cartoon book version of animes. We have a small selection of used DVDs. This section over here is gaming supplies, generally. It's for cards, to store cards, to sleeve cards, to protect them, to collect them. Over here are the smaller card games or board games, generally Munchkin, Flux, Zombie. There's a bunch of assorted card games that are based on 2 players to 4 players. It's friendly, really not competitive, just to have fun. To the right is my wall of Funko Pop Figures. It's very popular. You see them at all the animation cons, all the regular conventions. You see them at GameStop. Of course, we have to have some for our collectors too. All right, this section over here to my left is going to be the Dragon Ball section. Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball. The toys, the build kits, all the collectible stuff here. Next to it is Sailor Moon, which is probably our second most favorite anime collectability, because it's a very popular cartoon, especially for the young girls. We have toys, plushes, and stuff like that. Of course, we have to have some Pokemon now. Pokemon resurged with Sun and Moon and with Pokemon Go, so we have some Pokemon collectability. Behind me and all the way around me are going to be the Gundam Wings, Gundam Zeros, Gundam Endless Waltz, the newest of Iron Blood Orphans, but they're all the model kits to build Gundams. Then of course we have a little Godzilla. We have some Godzilla fan base in the area. So we have some Godzilla there for those people. We have some miniatures that are not 40K. We have some novels based on wargaming. So we have a lot of that. We have some paints and supplies. We have 5 different versions of paint. So if you want some paints, then we have those too. This section here is the Warhammer 40K section. The whole section Warhammer 40K. We have a big base of players, builders. All the armies in the Imperium are listed here. From Space Marines to Orcs, Imperial Guard, the whole gambit of Space Marine armies and then their enemies. We have blisters and boxes. It's a very popular section. That's why it's so big. About a year and a half ago, we had some board gamers come in, and we had literally 2 shelves of board games. And they brought their friends in. They started playing, so I started carrying more. It went from 2 shelves to 1 bookcase, then 1 bookcase to 2. Now we have 5 or 6 bookcases full of board games for kids, families, adults, whoever wants to play board games. We have the traditional store like Monopoly, which is We have the genres Monopoly also, with Firefly, Mass Effect, Pokemon Monopoly, Cthulhu Monopoly, and the traditional Monopoly also. Some other games that people may know are Axe and Allies, based on World War II. We have several versions of Axe and Allies from 1940, 41, 42, Pacific Realm. That's stuff that people will readily recognize. The other stuff, it's they can Google it, but we have a lot of those board games that people just see on tabletop gaming with them folks on TV. But over here, all the comic books, Marvel, DC, Independence, we try to provide comic books for everybody that collects them. Sometimes we get in some comic books like this giant size X-Men #1. The significance of giant size X-Men #1 is, of course, the first appearance of the new team, which includes Wolverine, Colossus, Storm, and a couple other guys that you see on the movies. But their first appearance as a team is giant size X-Men #1. That's why it's so significant. This particular one is signed by Stan Lee, which raises the price a little bit. We also have some comic books like this Sleeper. I call it a Sleeper because originally this comic book was worth $1. This is actually the first appearance of a well-known character named Harlequin. But before her appearance in this, she's only in the cartoon on TV. Then her first comic book appearance is this issue here, which is Batman Adventures #12. You see her on the cover right here, but this is actually her first appearance in a comic book. That's why it's significant. It's worth, I don't know, about $600.